On this Tuesday night, Ukrainians preparing for a long fight. The families torn apart by war as Russian forces keep up the assault on cities and towns. A standing ovation for Ukraine's president as he addresses the British Parliament.
We are looking for your help.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau meets other NATO leaders in Latvia.
But I'm doing what I can.
Recognizing the power and strength of Ukrainian women on this International Women's Day.
Why should I wait until someone will rescue me?
And in the running, who's joining the federal Conservative leadership race?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
It is all about survival for those who are living under siege in Ukraine. This is Mariupol. Finding basics like water, power, and food is getting harder by the day. About 200,000 people have been trapped in this coastal city for days under Russian bombardment. Repeated attempts to open a humanitarian corridor out have failed. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Others who are able to flee are getting out. The UN now says 2 million people have left Ukraine in 13 days. Europe has not had an exodus like this since the Second World War. And though Russia has not made huge advances in taking over territory, it does keep firing artillery and missiles at cities. Maria Avdieva lives in Kharkiv and has been documenting the Russian bombing.
Putin and his cronies claim they do not bombard. Now you would see behind me that the whole district, the whole area is completely destroyed. The houses are in ruins.
In London, British parliamentarians packed into the chamber to hear a special address by the Ukrainian president, who evoked Winston Churchill's most defiant speech.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
He pleaded for the world to do what needs to be done to stop Russia. We have complete coverage tonight, beginning with Mike Armstrong in Ukraine.
This is a painful goodbye. A police officer sending his family away. His son clearly not wanting to leave without him. Civilians in two parts of Ukraine were able to leave conflict zones Tuesday. This is Irpin, a suburb northwest of Kyiv. An estimated 10,000 people have crossed this spot, young, old, and every age in between, leaving their homes behind. This man says there was no power, no water, no heat. They were cut off from everything except the shelling. Even as they left, that shelling continued. Yes, the bombs are exploding, he says. It's intensive. Now, civilians also left the eastern city of Sumy. They boarded buses just hours after a Russian airstrike that local officials say killed 21 people, including 2 children. Now, there were plans to move people out of the port city of Mariupol. It didn't happen. The Ukrainian government claims Russian troops shelled what was supposed to be a safe route out. It now accuses Russia of holding 300,000 people hostage in conditions that are getting harder and harder. There is looting. People entering this store were chased away by the shopkeeper. Others were shamed into leaving. The anger is clearly building in Mariupol. The soldier urges people to stay united and not to panic. Now, in the eastern part of the country, 50,000 people a day are passing through Lviv on their way out of Ukraine. This man is originally from Nigeria. His home in Kharkiv was destroyed by shelling, he says, while he listened to the explosions from a nearby bunker.
The soundings and the vibration it's not good for anyone.
Scary?
Yeah, very scary. The vibration is like you're actually in the bomb. But there's something that keeps telling me that if you can hear it, you're still alive. If you can hear it, you're still alive.
Even among the helpers, the volunteers, there is stress. Their country is at war and friends and family are in danger. This woman got her mother out of the country but stayed to do her part. She says she had plans in life, but plans change. Her job and her dreams, she says, at the moment, aren't important.
Mike Armstrong is with me now from Lviv. Mike, so many thousands of people are leaving their homes because of this Russian aggression. What are their options, though? What are people you've talked to saying about where they're going?
Yeah, Donna, that's probably the most shocking thing about talking to people at the train station. They don't know where they're going. Every single person I spoke to today had the same answer. I don't know. You know, when we travel, we normally have a destination, maybe someone meeting us at the other end, hotel reservations, something like that. These people don't have that. All they know is they're heading west and they're hopefully heading somewhere safer. Now, the other thing that they do know is they can't stay here. This city is full. The mayor of Lviv says most people are just passing through, but they have about 200,000 extra people here right now. He says they'll need help from international aid organizations if more people come, and they expect more people to come. Donna?
Mike Armstrong in Lviv, Ukraine. Thanks.
Thank you.
NATO reaffirmed its unity today. The Secretary General meeting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Latvia. Trudeau announced Canada is extending its commitment to Operation REASSURANCE in Latvia, where several hundred Canadian soldiers are stationed. Abigail Bimman is traveling with the Prime Minister.
Getting along well with the Canadians?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau greets troops along with leaders from Spain, Latvia, and NATO.
We joke that we're actually taking care of a third of NATO right now.
540 Canadians lead a NATO battle group of 1,500 at this base, joined by troops from 9 other countries who have to figure out how to work together.
It's been a hard work, but honestly, if I had to say that can we fight, I have no doubts. We can actually go and fight.
And will they have to fight is the question. Canada has been in Latvia since 2017, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine has demanded attention here, with more Canadian troops on the way. Trudeau was asked if he'd go to war if Russia encroaches on a centimeter of NATO territory.
I know I can speak for all NATO members when I say we will all abide by Article 5.
An attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all. So we're committed to that by treaty.
We are stepping up to send an even stronger message to President Putin. We are here to protect every inch of Allied territory.
Canadians we spoke with on the base say the situation in Ukraine doesn't change their day-to-day jobs, but it's on their minds.
My heart's with Ukraine. It definitely increases my motivation and my passion for my role here, and I can see it around the base, and everybody's extremely switched on and doing their job.
My heart is with them as well, and sometimes as a soldier, we wish we could be there to help.
During his visit, Trudeau announced Canada will be extending its commitment here, set to expire in 2023. Canadians will now be staying with no fixed end date as the situation evolves. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Otaje Military Base, Latvia.
The man who is leading his nation's defense against Russia gave an impassioned plea to the British Parliament today. Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the Commons via video link, quoting Shakespeare, channeling Winston Churchill, and laying out the horrors inflicted on his people by Russian forces. Goomansingh reports.
Over 50 children have been killed. These are the children that could have lived. But these people have taken them away from us.
The pain of a nation laid bare as the Ukrainian president addresses politicians far from the front lines.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost.
Paraphrasing Winston Churchill, Volodymyr Zelenskyy ended his speech saying, "Glory to Ukraine, glory to Britain."
He's reminded us that our freedom and our democracy are invaluable.
In his righteous defense, I believe he has moved the hearts of everybody in this House.
Move the hearts, but not the political needle, to back Ukraine's plea for a no-fly zone. World leaders have repeatedly said such a move could lead to the war spilling beyond Ukraine's borders. On Monday, the UK announced an additional $295 million Canadian in aid money on top of the weapons, including thousands of anti-tank missiles, it has already supplied. In addition to that historic address to the House of Commons, Johnson also spent the day meeting with European leaders, particularly prime ministers from Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland.
We must help the people of Ukraine, and that Putin must fail.
Many of these leaders are hosting Ukrainians fleeing the war. Poland alone has seen more than 1.2 million people cross its borders. Those talks followed meetings Johnson had with Canada and the Netherlands Monday. Efforts by the UK's Prime Minister to coordinate support for a country fighting for its right to exist. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
More signs today of how the West is abandoning Russia. McDonald's, which opened its first restaurant in Moscow in 1990, is suspending operations in Russia. Other major American brands, including Coca-Cola, Starbucks, and PepsiCo, quickly followed suit. McDonald's says it will temporarily close its 850 restaurants in Russia, but will continue to pay the salaries of its 62,000 employees there. There's intense pressure on companies and countries to stop doing business with Russia. The U.S. has announced it will stop buying Russian oil and gas. The EU, which is even more reliant on Russian energy, says it's moving as quickly as possible to phase it out too. But there's a risk Russia may turn off the taps first. Jackson Prosco reports.
The lifeblood of the Russian economy is now the newest front in the war.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.
The U.S. is the latest country to turn off the taps to Russian oil and gas. It follows the lead of Canada and adds pressure on European nations to do the same.
Americans have rallied to support the Ukrainian people and made it clear we will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war.
Russian imports make up just a small fraction of energy supplies in North America, but they're king in Europe, where governments are less willing and less able to move away from their dependence on Moscow.
We can't move overnight, but we can certainly do it, and we can do it in a way that doesn't disrupt supply.
The UK says it hopes to stop all Russian oil and gas imports by the end of 2022. The EU wants to cut Russian gas imports by 2/3 before the end of the year. It will take until 2030 to phase out in full.
It's hard, bloody hard, but it's possible if we're willing to go further and faster than we've done before.
Yet no one knows if it will work to stop Vladimir Putin or his war machine.
As the Russian economy suffers more and more, as the sanctions they start biting, that's where we need to be watching how Putin responds.
The response so far has been to inflict pain on Western consumers. The Kremlin says it might soon cut off natural gas supplies to Europe. And Russia claims that oil prices could suddenly double without access to its markets at a time when consumers are paying record amounts for fuel at the pumps. That hasn't stopped the newfound resolve to end the world's dependence on Russian energy.
As far as I'm concerned, gas prices are irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that we take a stand.
Long considered a security risk, it's now a moral one as well. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
U.S. intelligence agencies estimate between 2,000 and 4,000 Russian troops have been killed in the invasion. Ukraine says this major general was among them. They say he died outside Kharkiv along with other senior officers. Vitaly Gerasimov was a veteran of Chechnya, Syria, and Crimea. The investigative journalism agency Bellingcat has also confirmed his death. And American intelligence agencies briefed U.S. lawmakers today. Sanctions and Ukrainian resistance, they say, have slowed Russia's advance. But the CIA director says Vladimir Putin is unlikely to be deterred.
I think Putin is angry and frustrated right now. He's likely to double down and try to grind down the Ukrainian military with no regard for civilian casualties. Where that leads, I think, is for an ugly next few weeks.
Washington also says it's documenting possible war crimes committed by Russia.
Representative, I don't know that we have direct evidence besides what we see on social media. Certainly the bombing of schools and facilities that are not associated with the Ukrainian military would indicate to me that he's stepping up right to the line if he hasn't done so already.
The UN estimates over 400 civilians have died in Ukraine in the last 13 days. A Texas man has been convicted on all charges he faces related to the attack on the U.S. Capitol. A jury found Guy Reffitt guilty on all 5 criminal charges he faced, including obstructing Congress and interfering with police officers. He stormed the U.S. Capitol while armed with a gun and zip ties on January 6, 2021. The maximum sentence the 49-year-old faces for the most severe charge is 20 years. He is the first defendant to go on trial and is considered a test of the U.S. Justice Department's ability to tie one person's actions in the crowd to the broader attack on Capitol Hill. The federal Conservatives' quest to find a new leader. Coming up, the newest contenders joining the race. Tory MP Leslyn Lewis is making a second run at the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. The Ontario-based lawyer was a relative unknown before vying for the Conservative leadership in 2020. She was the only woman in that race, and she ended up placing third behind Erin O'Toole. She is the second person to announce that she wants the job, along with MP Pierre Poilievre. More people are expected to join in the coming days, though, including former Quebec Premier Jean Charest. Eric Sorensen looks at his chances at becoming the next Tory leader.
He was one of the brightest young stars at a time when the Conservative political universe was at its zenith, the 1980s. Charismatic, fluently bilingual, and so highly regarded, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney made Jean Charest the youngest cabinet minister in Canadian history.
As we say in French, laisser la poussière tomber.
In the 90s, Charest became leader, but only after the party had collapsed, bringing about the Reform Party and the Bloc Québécois. He helped rebuild the party, and many credit his oratory for lifting the no vote in Quebec's referendum on independence.
Québécois et Québécoises, Canadiens et Canadiennes, le 30 octobre, nous dirons no!
He would go on to become the Premier of Quebec for 9 years, then seemingly left politics for good.
And that's rarely our responsibility, to be that national political party.
Now he's back. He hinted last week at what he thinks he can do for the party, broaden its appeal.
One thing that I believe to be very important is to have a national Conservative Party that is able to represent every part of Canada.
He took over the party at a time when rebuilding and outreach were required, and he went on to become Premier of Quebec, our second largest province in Canada. So he knows how to campaign, he knows how to build, and he knows how to win.
Charest was the focus of a corruption investigation during his days as Premier, and others suggest he is yesterday's man, not the right choice for a modern Conservative party.
We have to repudiate Conservatives like Jean Charest who have an inferiority complex and want to always act like Liberals in pursuit of trying to win power.
Others see it differently.
We are an inclusive party. We should be a welcoming party. And we should also be looking at all parts of the country for success in the next election.
Charest shakes up a Conservative race that many had already seen as MP Pierre Poilievre's to win.
If we know anything so far about this leadership race, a pillow fight it is not going to be, a barroom brawl it will most certainly be.
If Jean Charest's goal is to be a Conservative with enough centrist appeal to beat the Liberals and win the country, he may first have to prove he is Conservative enough to win the party. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Ottawa.
The more boosters, the better. Ahead, the WHO's change in advice on vaccines. The World Health Organization now says it strongly supports urgent and broad access to COVID-19 booster shots. It's a change from last year when the organization called for a moratorium on the shots, saying they weren't necessary and contributed to vaccine inequality. The WHO says there has since been a substantial increase in global vaccine supply, making distribution more viable, and it says vaccines are needed to keep up with the evolving virus. COVID isn't over in China. There's a surge in new cases. Nearly 500,000 new infections have been detected in the past month. That's about 80% of all reported cases in the country since the pandemic began. The Chinese government says it must stick with its policy to aim for 0 cases, though, rather than attempting to live with the virus. Women in War next, celebrating the strength of Ukrainian women on this International Women's Day. War changes everything, and when it happens almost overnight, as it has in Ukraine, everyone, men, women, and children, must immediately adapt. On this International Women's Day, we want to salute the women of Ukraine. We knew they were strong, but the power and bravery they're showing in the face of this invasion is stunning to witness. Heather Urix West has some of their stories.
For Olga Renberg, this is a moment of gut-wrenching relief. Her mother, Ludmila, is now safe in Edmonton after escaping the violence of Kyiv.
It's a huge relief. So now I have one person less to worry about.
But for Olga, there is guilt as well, and a longing to help her homeland.
But I'm doing what I can.
Honestly, I'm praying every second that they will survive.
Calgary's Elena Burden is in Poland. She met her sister at the border with Ukraine for just a moment this week, long enough for a hug and a promise that she would take her 8 and 10-year-old niece and nephew back to Canada where they would be safe.
My sister, Tanya, so she said, I can give you my kids hand to hand because I trust you. You can take care about them, but I will go back to Ukraine.
An impossible decision facing so many mothers in the country right now, to leave with their kids or bring them to safety before returning to fight.
Women are involved in every conceivable aspect of this, from the front lines to being the refugees themselves, to caring for the refugees.
32-year-old Alana Bashinska has become a soldier as well. In her old life, she taught people how to use makeup. Now she is defending her city.
It's my country, it's my city, here are my families and my friends, my animals. So why should I wait until someone will rescue me?
So Alana fights as Elena opens her home and Olga advocates and prays. Just 3 stories in a country with millions more. Heather Yurex West, Global News, Calgary.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. We leave you tonight with some melodies in the darkness. That's Ukrainian violinist Vera Litovchenko. She's playing in a bomb shelter in Kharkiv. This performance, she says, is dedicated to her late grandmother. She plays to lift the spirits of those sheltering here, and when her friends react to her posts on social media, she says she knows they're still alive. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow.